Argentina is about to enter its most defining moment of the 21st century. For literally decades, it has failed as a country. Its governance has been pitiful, its economy has been lacking, it's been marred by failure in every sense of the word, with its currency becoming the true smoking gun over recent years. It's essentially been an economy on the brink of collapse for years at this point, and with inflation currently sitting at 140% and rising by over 5% a month, no one could reasonably say that its currency hasn't already collapse. And fundamentally, that's why we're speaking about Argentina today, because they've just had a shock election where a figure even more polarizing than Donald Trump has just been elected into power, and he promises to change literally everything. Now, one of two things is about to happen. Either the country will continue its descent into turmoil, or it will claw its way back and leave the ideas of collapse in the past. The most dangerous aspect of this all, though, it isn't what President Milei says he will do, it's the polar opposite. It's whether he will do what he promised at all. Now, Argentina hasn't always been such a failure. Back a few centuries, it was widely held up as a country that could develop and advance at any point, and it was only a matter of time until it became a major success. You see, Argentina has a mild climate, similar to that of Europe and the United States. It had a large European immigrant population that was educated, and a heavy proportion of them were WASPs as well. They even saw a particular spike in the number of Germans in the country post-World War II, hardly good for their morality, I know, but Germany was at the time one of the richest and best educated countries in the world, and well, it still is. Now, political instability seems to be the thing that Argentina continually suffers from, and it makes advancement basically impossible. There is even a running joke amongst economists that there are 4 types of economies in the world. There are developed economies, undeveloped economies, Japan, and Argentina. Argentina being that perpetual failure, considering how their population today consists of 97% descendants of European immigrants, and every other country with ratios that high, like the US, like Canada and Australia, are massively more wealthy. Now, this all leads up to today, where Argentina has an inflation rate of 140%. Their economy has failed to grow substantially for literally decades on end, and the country is well and truly an economic failure. Their recent governments have done nothing to fix this either, with COVID being that final death knell, screwing everything up ever so more than we even thought possible. So Milei is now in power, and he's promised change, but what explicitly does he plan to do? Well, his first promise, and something that he has already fulfilled, was to slash the value of the Argentinian currency, which has been described by the country's leftists as the worst thing he could possibly do. But in reality, this act by Milei is no act at all, because the Argentinian government couldn't enforce their currency's value before, and no one in the world was willing to pay for the peso what the government claimed it was worth. Essentially, Argentina has had 2 exchange rates for years at this point, one which the government claims exists and yet no one will ever use, and the black market rate, which every business and individual actually has to use every single day. Now, Milei has simply brought those 2 exchange rates closer together. Milei is also planning on slashing government spending across the board, which, to be honest, makes perfect sense. The government can't afford its current spending, and not by a long shot, so ending that wasteful spending that bankrupted the country is hardly a bad thing, and it's not like they have decent terms on their bonds either. Now, first on the chopping block is an end to many public works designed to provide jobs, invest into the economy, and promote growth, but they have all notably failed in that regard. Now, either as a bid to buy some more votes, a bone thrown to his opposition, or simply a lie to quash his critics, Milei has promised to double economic support for the poorest in the country, as the coming few months promise to be very difficult indeed, as he has this shock to the economy. But whether or not this promise will be met is obviously yet to be seen, and personally, I'm very doubtful that it will actually come to fruition. Finally, the big thing we're all waiting to see, eager I might even say to see it, Milei has promised to declare war against the central bank. Even just a couple weeks ago, on November the 24th, Milei said that shutting down the central bank was non-negotiable and that it was 100% going to happen. But we're in December now, a new governor of the central bank has officially been appointed, and so far, nothing has really been said by Milei about his plan to shut the central bank down. Now, supposedly, that's because he's focusing on fiscal policy for now, trying to balance the books essentially and get the country on the straight and narrow before later going on with his assault against the central bank in some months or years to come. But frankly, I do have to say I have a few doubts here. The sad reality is that this is a playbook we've seen many times before. Right-wing politicians drive up awareness for the pitiful state of the country, and then they use that sorry state to get themselves elected. They speak of acts and new laws that will fix the massive problems at hand, but when they actually get elected, all seems like it might just turn out okay. But then, more often than not, no changes are actually made. In the UK, where I'm from, my home country, the Conservative Party was put into power in 2010, a right-wing government, or so they claim. That was over 13 years ago, and for every single one of the last 13 years, the government have claimed they are committed to reducing net migration as a whole and to stopping illegal immigration altogether. And they've been in control of our borders and our laws for 13 years. But over those 13 years, the polar opposite has actually happened. Back in 2010, 250,000 people immigrated into the United Kingdom. So far in 2023, that number has reached 1.2 million people. This is under a right-wing government which repeatedly and for 13 years on end has banged the war drum against immigration, stating that it's a problem they're committed to fighting against. And let's not forget how Brexit was predicated almost entirely on immigration. And since 2016, when the UK voted to leave the European Union and take control of its borders, immigration has still more than tripled. Or maybe we should take a look at a little bit of a more recent example of maybe Italian politics and their newly crowned Queen of the Right, Meloni, who was elected directly on a platform of stopping the boats and stopping illegal immigration. Sounds similar? Well, it should. She was the biggest talker around when it came to getting votes, but the second she got into power, she caved and has done absolutely nothing to fix the problem she was elected to fix. The list of examples like these go on and on. Right-wing governments acting more left-wing than you could actually believe, and only pretending to be right-wing to secure those votes. Now, why does this happen? I seriously wish I could tell you for sure, but I just don't know. It's possible that these politicians know that they can control the public sentiment around these issues, and if they were, for instance, to go out and fix the immigration issue, then they would have no reason to be re-elected into the future. Much like how Winston Churchill won us the war for World War II. Much like how Winston Churchill won the war in the Second World War, but was still elected out of office afterwards. It's also possible that the establishment that is dedicated to keeping the common man down is simply so entrenched that it doesn't matter who is elected into office, the puppet masters continue to call the shots. Now, the question on my mind right now is, will the same happen for Milei? Will he stick true to his election promises? Will he take an axe to the establishment and drain the swamp? The early days are actually looking a little bit bright on this front for Argentina, as within a week of being put into power, Milei has already devalued the Argentinian currency by 50%. Now again, that sounds extreme, but it was really just a realist move, as the currency was never worth what the previous government claimed, and no one in the entire country was actually transacting at that previous exchange rate, as the exchange rate was well and truly run by the black market, by these false exchange rates which the government claims shouldn't exist. Now, why on earth might all of this be relevant to you and I and our economics and our investments? Well, Argentina could prove to be an interesting bellwether in two senses of the word. The first being about politics and how they might evolve for us outside of Argentina, and the second being about economics and if his supposedly radical, really just basically economic sound policies will work and help Argentina's economy improve. Now, should Milei stick to his guns and make the changes he's promised, there's a very good chance that we see other politicians in our countries go the same route. If Milei is rewarded for actually fixing his country's economy and not elected out after his use has been made and done with, we might see similar political impacts in our countries. Maybe we see British, French, German, American, and Canadian right-wing politicians actually adopt right-wing policies and enact them. Maybe they will actually try to institute change and not settle for the total bare minimum, or maybe Milei is shafted and crafted into an ugly scapegoat and used to keep every other country well and truly in line. On the economic front, should Argentina fix their sorry state, bring inflation well and truly down, and initiate sustainable growth in the country and have a taste of that sweet foreign direct investment, the rest of the world will take note. This is already happening in El Salvador, for instance, which is the first time in my lifetime seeing foreign companies rush to invest into the country now that crime has been dealt with and businesses can be allowed to prosper under the rule of law. Now, perhaps if all goes well in Argentina, we'll see a total revamp of the world's financial system, or at least some of our financial systems. A removal of these corrupt central banks with their secret mandates causing them to always do the wrong thing. Now, Lord knows you and I and many other people here will be looking forward to something like that happening, but the sad truth is here, is that no matter what happens, we aren't really going to know the final result for years to come. Inflation alone will take Argentina a hell of a long time to fix, and the rest of the country, the economy, will take years longer. We need to keep in mind and remember that macroeconomics does not play out swiftly, and while we'll be able to follow along for the journey, we can't possibly know what is going to happen in Argentina yet, or what that will mean for us all around the rest of the world. The only thing I personally pray for is that Milei doesn't go uber-nationalist and insist on starting another war in the Falklands. God knows it wouldn't end well for him, but I can't say I'd be too surprised at all. Now, apologies for that little dig, but I am at my heart very British. Now, it's been a while since I've posted a real video here on Stoic Finance, and it may well have shocked you to see this one pop up in your feed, but I can assure you I'm back, and I'm back for good. I'll be uploading 2 to 3 times a week, giving you the updates that you need and hopefully entertaining you a bit as well. And if you're looking for more of my videos, why not start with this one right here?